Good morning. We are live on Thursday, and I'm Joel Fieri, and this is Christian Perspective, otherwise known as the Faith Filter. And we are waiting for the one and only Michael Gavlak to come. We're not waiting for Lucas because Lucas is always here. Good man. Good morning, Lucas. Don't know if Michael's doing his show and going over, which I won't go on and on about because I always do. But we're waiting for him. And then we're talking today about the here he is, folks. And to give you his version of Sharp Dressed Man, we have from oh no, wait a minute. It's Michael.
Every girl's crazy about a sharp dressed man.
Yeah, yep.
I only aspire to have a beard like Billy Gibbons.
Okay. Looking good. Looking good.
Thank you. I want to.
And I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Is your mic on?
Check. Really? Is it low?
I don't mind. Been having receiver problems. So speak up there, Michael.
All right. I can hear myself, but
okay, it's probably on my end, but I can hear you well enough. And okay, Robin, you're now Rocky Mountain Robin. Okay, good morning. Haven't seen you in a while, Robin. AC's here. Yeah,
piling in.
Good to see you guys. So, all right, Michael, I'm going to play this intro and then we will talk about the Marxist Playbook, which is on full display.
I've been thinking about a couple of things. One, last summer, if I were sitting in a church right now in Minneapolis and a bunch of people burst in, I'd be on edge because last summer a shooter showed up at a Catholic church in Minneapolis and shot a bunch of kids. 2 died. I think 30 people were injured. 26 were kids. And so the terror in that church, I think, is probably warranted, if for no other reason than we've seen radical violence at a church in the not too distant past. We've also seen, I think, attempts to create violence and mayhem and fear in churches around the country, synagogues and other places. And so I feel like the radical left is somewhat emboldened right now to go up to and now into places of worship. It sounds like the FACE Act is what they're going to use. I've also heard today from some sources that the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, they may look at that for bringing charges to Don Lemon and these radical leftists that went into this church. I think if they don't do something to these people who did this, you're going to see it proliferate in churches across the country, and that would be very regrettable.
You make a good point about the issue, but it isn't necessary to say the radical left did this. It's protest.
It's necessary to stop.
You're making it political. It's legal. How do you know? You know who was there? You went through the videos, looked at all the videos.
I watched the videos, and I also looked at the list of people that they themselves published. It looks like the radical left to me.
Okay. That's always fun. And Michael, are you on stage?
I don't know. You click some button and push me off stage.
I know. I need a running producer as we're here. So that's always fun, isn't it? To see the radical left tied in knots like that with straightforward truth about what really is happening.
It's not fair to say the radical left. It's like these people are in such a bubble. They don't. Who else is going to do that, right?
Right.
Don Lemon's not going to hang out with the radical right, and the radical right is so tiny, it's like you can't even find them.
Yeah, and I suppose there are some really weirdos on what you would call the radical right that might disrupt a church, but I don't even know if they're what you would call conservative. So, because if you scratch what they call the radical right, you'll find some Marxism there too. So, but yeah, so I call this the Marxist Playbook because in going all the way back to the French Revolution, which to me is the cradle of Marxism, it's really where those kind of ideas had their birth, at least as society wide. And all the terrors of the French Revolution, all the way through, obviously, when Marx and Engels started writing, and then obviously in the 20th century when communism had its big heyday. That 20th century was the communist experiment, especially the second half of the 20th century. And this was the playbook. This was how they had to do it. They had to attack churches, because the one thing that communism cannot allow is something else besides the state to be God. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, it's obviously from our paradigm, the correct paradigm. We are designed as worshipers, right? We're designed to worship God, but if you don't believe in God, you're still going to worship, right? You cannot escape what you were made for. And so if you convince yourself that there is no creator of all things, the next God is the state, right? The corporate ruling authority. It's crazy, because growing up, I was exposed to some of the, the leftists. I was a little bit in that camp because of my elders and the people that were around me, and it was anti-establishment, 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 and then fast forward 30 years, and they rise and they become the establishment, right? And then it's like,
yeah, pretty much.
So it's like that spiteful liberal kid in class who was snarky is now actually making policy that affects the rest of the world, and it's quite a thing to see it being exposed this way. It's weird how, I mean, you've known me a while, and the project I'm working on, and what I keep finding myself kind of in the middle of things, or things happening in our culture that I've been kind of researching, and sometimes they intersect. And in this past September, I went to visit my mom. She had surgery. And where did I fly into? I flew into Minneapolis, St. Paul. And as the plane lands and everybody gets off, and I'm toward the back and I'm coming on, and the cleaning crew that comes on, 4 Somalis, clear as a bell, 4 Somalis coming in to clean the plane. And it struck me. And while I was there, I was visiting my mom. It was also actually the day I landed. When I got home, or to my sister's place, and got settled where I was sitting, I turned on the TV, and it was the Charlie Kirk Memorial in Phoenix. So that was like the timing of my arriving there. And then when I left, I was there about a week. When I left, I read a news article about the DOJ going into Minnesota to start investigating some corruption and fraud. And it was like, oh, the dates that I was there was when the DOJ was launching these investigations. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of coincidental. But then it just ramps up from there. That was like the beginning. And each week that's passed, each month that's passed, Minnesota has become this focal point of the whole nation and the whole world. And now we hear tell that the administration, the DOJ, is formulating a strategy and a template because of the corruption from the top down in Minnesota, that they're formulating a plan that they're going to export to all 50 states, right? Finding the corruption. What they're doing there, concentrating ICE and the Department of Justice and the fraud investigations, and the governor being subpoenaed, and the mayor of Minneapolis, St. Paul being subpoenaed. It's like, this is the template they're going to take to California. They're going to take to New York. They're going to take right. So it's crazy that we're seeing this, but it feels like the rabid dog is cornered, right? These people going into a church to protest the whole point clearly is to get attention. And so as we're all talking about it, and they find out we're talking about it, there's a certain sense of satisfaction. But the DOJ just yesterday, whoever it was, said arrests are coming, referring specifically to that incident. It has to happen. As Jenkins said, if there are no arrests, it will only embolden and spread this misbehavior. So
yeah, and as of this morning, they have arrested the leader, the lady that was professional agitator. They try and think this is grassroots. This is not. These are paid, organized protesters that have been trained to do this. And it's funny you mentioned the corruption, because I've heard it said, and I think that's a big part of this, is that you remember that corruption scandal of the Somali daycares involved billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's huge. So what can we do to distract from that? What can we do to take attention away from that? And I think there's that factor in it too. But I've been trying to tell people for the last, at least since COVID lockdowns, and even before that, we are in a communist revolution, whether we want to admit it or not. Yeah. And as churches, we are going to continue to be targets, whether we want to admit it or not, or whether we want to talk about it or not.
As we, like you and I, and people of our ilk, whether it's here on This Way Network or just the conservative,
we do have an ilk, don't we?
We do have an ilk, and it's a fun, friendly, very informed ilk.
Yeah, an ilk nonetheless.
As we watch and pay attention, some of this stuff, it's like, man, it feels like certain things happening. For example, the corruption, and then Tim Walz feeling the heat and declaring that he's not going to run for re-election, and then Renee Good gets shot, right, the timing of that, and then that blows up, and obviously they're like, this is great, now we can distract from the other things. It's like, it certainly couldn't have been orchestrated, right? That ICE agent didn't go in that day going, well, I'm going to do something that's going to let the Democrats distract from the corruption, blah blah blah. But it is God orchestrating it. It's like God, my camera's a little blurry. God orchestrates these things and lines them up, and the conspiracy theorists, right? The conspiracy theorists will jump on these things. It's like, how could that? It feels coordinated. It couldn't have just randomly happened. But God does that, right? It is coordinated, just not by man, right? God is in control. He's got a hand in these things, and it's fun to observe and watch. It's so blatant to us who've been watching it, who've been tracking it. But the more and more people on the left that see this, the more and more see how ridiculous their side is, right? And it's this gradual eating away of their base. And by focusing in on Minnesota and Tim Walz, the nominee for vice president, it's like, couldn't be a better demonstration of how morally bankrupt that side of the aisle is. So it's nice to have a Justice Department that's not backing down. I put my foot down saying the Renee Good shooting is not going to be George Floyd 2, and it's not. They're not burning. Like, yes, they're protesting, but these are small protests that are they're concentrated in remote areas. They're not spreading nationwide. People aren't, right? So, thank God.
Well, and because you have video evidence right there, while committing a felony, obstructing federal agents, she committed a felony by assault with a deadly weapon, and that one angle shows that she hit the guy and he slid back 5 or 10 feet before he fired. So he's got internal injuries. It's just anybody, the only people watching that could see that as some kind of injustice are people that are so dyed in the wool in their Marxist worldview, whether they know it's that or not, whether they admit it's that or not. It's obvious what's happening here. And I don't know that it was coordinated. It wasn't planned. And like you said, God does have his ways of orchestrating these things. But, in no way does the left side of this, the radical left, think something like that was unexpected. They were hoping for something like that to happen. That's why they train these people. That's why they bring these radical people in. I think she came in from Canada with her quote unquote wife, right? And they said they were never going to come in the country, but they came in and they were trained how to get in ICE's way. And by the way, if you can create a negative, a violent incident that we can use, all the better. Yeah. So, and I said, it is part of the playbook. It really is. So.
I love that CNN has Jenkins on there because it's he's why people tune in, right? Like, I know it's Abby Phillips's show, because they need to have, the black woman, because that's what they do. But Scott Jenkins would, he's the only ratings they get, I'm sure. Like, he just says it straightforward, and I love he's a trained professional. So as he's listening to these others that are brought in that are just saying the most ludicrous stuff, and just when you can see his face, his reaction to these people saying the most inane things, like what we just saw, is like, how do we know they were leftists? We can't say they were leftists. Like, you're not paying attention,
Yeah, and if you saw the other lady's face, they kind of cut to her when he was talking about the church attacks previous where people were killed, and she's just like, she's just not having it. She just can't stand the fact that he's actually bringing this up, So it's not just that they're denying it's the radical left. They've denied that this is even a problem, even an issue.
It's free speech.
Right.
But the Constitution protects our right to peacefully assemble. And that was the opposite of peaceful assembly. That was a disruption. It was a terror. It was bringing terror. I like that he made that point, right? This terror. Some churches have been under siege and under attack. In Canada, like 30 churches were burned to the ground back. I forget exactly. I think it was around the George Floyd time. It's like they are not hiding it. They are targeting the one thing that unites the most powerful group, right? Christians, when we're united, there's no stopping us. So they're, we're over the target if they're targeting us.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to add this. This is kind of the, people will say that communism is anti-religion, but this lady from China, I came across this, and this one, she kind of gives a good explanation of the reasons why Marxists target Christian churches or churches in general.
Why, from your perspective, why did religion become such a central attack of the communists?
It's all about power. That's why I think it's important you brought up the religion. Why they are all after the religion? Because they want to control people's mind. And so some people say that communism is atheism. I don't think so. The more I really think about what I've been through and read more, it is a religion. It replaces the old religion. It become a new religion. And everything they did is absolutely religious. And in China, and we have a God. That is Mao. And growing up, we have our little Bible, and that is Mao's little red book. And we have a political study, which is our going to church. And we have our confession, which is criticism and self-criticism. So even as little kid, every week we're going to have a political study session. And that session, you're going to confess. You're going to, we will read Mao's little red book, and we will say that I did not do this and this right according to Mao's instruction. And also I saw you did not do this and this right. And then so we criticize each other, and we denounce ourselves, and we swear we're going to do better. And
okay. So that, to me, is the real issue. Communism is not anti-religion. Communism is its own religion. There is, you talk about the God-shaped vacuum in all of us. Well, and talk about Satan being the ultimate deceiver, right? The author of lies. And the ultimate counterfeit. Well, the ultimate counterfeit faith of the 20th century, and like I said, that this revolution we're in now is not to eliminate faith. It's to replace the true faith that we hold with a new faith, which is not really a new faith at all, is it? But this different faith in Marx, in Mao, in whoever it might be. So this is not a vacuum. This is not something that's, a better alternative than religion. It's just an alternative religion that they think is going to bring some kind of utopia and paradise, but will ultimately just bring destruction and death, which it always has. They somehow think they're good. If they do it better, maybe only 50 million people will be murdered, Michael, instead of 100, right? But this is just the ultimate satanic deception to me. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's Jordan Peterson always harps on this is it's not every religion does this, right? The different religions all have their periods of massacre and killing and ruling by the sword, and religion is violence in and of itself, right? That it's that equivalency that they, don't attack the Muslims because the Christians were just as bad. Well, and then we should just get rid of religion and just be an atheist secular state. And there's no such thing as in agreement, right? It's like communism isn't really anti-God. It's just another religion. And so, but the way Jordan Peterson would kind of put it in perspective, he's like, yeah, the Crusades, maybe it was Doug Wilson, one of those two. The Crusades, in total, about 2,000 people, right? About 2,000 people were killed in that process. That's Stalin on a bad day.
Right.
Like that's 60 million, or upwards of 60 million under Stalin. That's atheism on a slow day, right? 2,000. The millions. There's far more people executed under godless rule than under any other system. So
exactly.
But it's being exposed. Christian. I had this conversation yesterday with somebody, and we're like, was it yesterday or the day before? And I used the phrase "greatest Christian nation" in reference to the United States. And the person, this is a Christian friend of mine that I was talking with, and it gave them pause and like, "Greatest Christian nation? What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, we're backslidden, right? We're backslidden, but we're still." In our roots, we're founded as a Christian nation, and we are the greatest nation, right? We are the most powerful nation. We're the largest nation with the biggest economy. And so when I say that, Christian is our history, our roots. God blessed America. God provided us abundance, and we backslid. And now we're in a phase of repentance. I really think we're in a phase of repentance. It's all in God's hands, and you'd think that the Charlie Kirk assassination would have woken up everybody and that we'd all get along. But then you've got your opportunists out there, like causing division within our side, and you've got the states that decide not to do any redistricting because we're principled and we don't do that. I'm like, we really need to not lose the House in the midterms, right? We don't need any slowing down of the current agenda, because Trump's only got 3 years left to continue this. And we should have, I like to say we're going to, JD Vance will come in next, but, let's not be overconfident and rest on our laurels. We need to make sure we're continually doing the right things.
Well, yeah, and the other side's not. Did we expect them to just roll over and die? No. I mean, they keep shooting themselves in the foot, but then we'll turn around and shoot ourselves in the foot right back. So, like I said, you and I are in California here. We know that the Marxist train is not slowing down here at all.
Yeah, we're in the heart of the resistance, right? We're embedded in the one state that will be the last holdout. And I think it's, when you look at those maps of the drift of the political drift, it's all going red. It's all going right. It's just that we're in a state that's so deeply blue. It's a 10% shift right is not enough. It needs to continue. And we have to suffer suffer the gas prices and the just ridiculous embrace of illegal. Well, we'll see what's going to happen in California. I'm staying.
Okay.
Wind or rain, snow or sleet, illegals and high taxation. I'm digging in.
All right, you heard it here first. So, yeah, like I said, my pastor talks about that when ever he encounters someone who's talking about leaving California, which we have. I mean, obviously, anybody from center to the right in California has got to some point think, can we do this? And so, my wife and I have looked at properties in other states just because we'd be foolish not to. But my pastor says, what kind of soldier abandons the battlefield when the battle is engaged? And I said, that's a good point, Pastor. Now what kind of general are you going to be when the battle is engaged? But the battle is engaged. Yeah. And I've been, the last church I was at, the generals of that church went over to the other side at the first time the battle got rough. What are you going to do? Right. Because all the pressure here, even on Christians, Christians aren't immune to this mind virus, this mind virus, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, the biggest church in this area is going very, very woke, very, very fast. And it's changing the Christian culture around this area, which is otherwise a very conservative area, or not very conservative, but it's, a conservative part of a blue community. So we're not immune to it. And we have to ourselves make sure that we're staying grounded in the true faith of this and not falling for this deception. It really is a deception right out of the pit of hell.
Yeah.
So
there are two churches that I have attended, not as my church, but had attended a few times at the invitation of a Hollywood Christian friend of mine. He ended up leaving California, but both of those churches, and they were well-attended churches, both of them just went liberal in LA. And so it's like, don't give in. I was actually shocked. And during the pandemic, it really exposed a lot of people.
Yes.
My wife has a friend who works at a church, and she sent me a Sunday morning sermon one time, and I'm listening to it, and the guy is just all DEI anti. It was like, what? This is coming from the pulpit, and there's people out there saying amen, and it's like, whoo, the deception runs deep. But it's a purging, right? It's a cleansing, right? God is using this to like I said earlier, people are seeing the insanity of the disrupting a church service, right? Some of those people walking into that church service to protest had never been in a church before, right? Never walked in the doors. They had no idea, no grasp of what they were doing, of how disruptive and how evil that, as they were justifying their actions as being the moral. It's like they call good evil and evil good. And just, I pray for them, pray for those who persecute you, love your enemies, that they will come to their senses and recognize, wow, I was such a fool and used by Satan, right? That they might come to repentance.
Right. But also realize that they don't hate you. Jesus said they hated me first.
Yeah.
So they're gonna hate you. And one of the reasons that churches, otherwise faithful churches, go left is because they think, they hear this from the world, they hear this from non-Christians, and they think we have to show them we're not that way. We personalize it, and we don't realize that it's alive. And they think, well, we have to change our tune, we have to be more winsome, we have to do this, that. It's not going to work. It's not going to satisfy them. Talking about the Marxist angle, the people, the protesters yelling in the church or yelling at people on the street constantly, it just brings to mind the struggle sessions of Marxism. The guys in China, the guys wearing the dunce caps and people just screaming at them, constantly. We're not going to be winsome enough to get ourselves out of this. We have to cling to the truth. And like I said, when the battle's engaged, we have to fight the good fight. And our generals have to be good generals.
Yeah. Not
So-
abdicate their responsibility.
Yeah. And whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. And we may just be entering a period of persecution for our faith. And then we count ourselves worthy, right?
Amen.
So we're over time. Michael, thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy touring schedule there with ZZ Top and coming out.
Yeah, we'll have our new album coming out. Just kidding.
Really? I'm looking forward to it.
Good to see you, my friend.
I have a feeling it'll have kind of a metal theme to it, though.
A little
Metal
more
theme.
edge.
Ilk. That's your ilk. So, all right. We're out of time. Thanks for listening, everybody. I will be on myself. I think Ben's out tomorrow, so I'll be holding down the fort. So we'll see you then. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye now.